welcome back to the Fandom Zone podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the Fandom Zone, ready to talk more Jupiter's Legacy with my wonderful co-host, wonderful friend, and someone who's really glad to be back in the bars right now, DJ Nick. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great, Charles. What can I say? Like the good old Toby Keith, I love this bar. So definitely very happy to be back in the bars. Yes, I do. So I'm very, very happy about that. So, obviously get to hang out with my friends and see everybody again and see, who's gotten more gray hair, who has more of a, beard sticking out from the mask and stuff. So, and of course, on the other side, I'm always super happy to be here with you, talking to you, because I always miss you when I don't get to talk to you. So very happy to be talking some more Jupiter's Legacy. And how are things with you?
Well, that's very sweet of you to say. I miss you when I'm not talking with you because, you're my podcast brother and, just a wonderful friend. So I really enjoy doing this with you, and it kind of is one of the highlights of my week. So things have been a little crazy today. We talked about this, that I've been very busy today, been very disorganized, which is very rare for me.
It's very unlikely.
So it throws me off my game when I am, obviously. So I'm trying to get back on track. Maybe you can help me because I think I need it right now.
I'll do my best. Hey, listen, even Wayne Gretzky had off days.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly not the great one. I'm the not so great one, but I try. But I'm definitely looking forward to talking about Jupiter's Legacy as we move on to episodes 3 and 4. So here in episode 217 of the Fandom Zone, we're going to be discussing Painting the Clouds with Sunshine. And the second episode, which is the fourth episode, really, All the Devils Are Here. Teleplay for Painting the Clouds with Sunshine by Marina K. Balogun Cook. And for All the Devils Are Here was written by Akela Cooper. And both episodes, interestingly, kind of like the first 1 and 2, were directed by the same director, but this time it was Christopher J. Byrne directing both episodes. So I'm wondering if they're directing these as blocks, kind of like they do on Doctor Who or other shows where you get a director who directs, like a certain chunk of the season.
It could be, yeah, because I definitely noticed a different style compared to the first two.
Right.
It's odd. I don't know if it was just me, Charles, or was because that show stuck in my head so much. Some of the scenes in these two episodes gave almost a Lovecraft Country vibe.
That's a good comparison a little bit because there does seem to be a very dark, sinister undertone to this 1929 setting, especially as we go out to this farm in Kansas. A Kansas farm and the character who's kind of a Superman analog.
Yeah, exactly. What superhero do we know that came from Kansas or was raised in Kansas?
Yeah.
We wonder.
Yeah. I mean, coincidence? I think not.
No. But no, as I said.
But I do agree with you. There is a kind of a sinister undertone to this.
Especially with the music used, and when you actually, of course, we get to the character himself, Star Fox and stuff, that whole vibe was very Lovecraft Country to me. And also I think the color palettes that was used often appears in Lovecraft Country. And yes, folks, I do love Lovecraft Country. I'm just putting that out there.
It's a really good show. I've seen it. I'm a big fan of it too, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and in fact, folks, if you do like a mixture of the strange, mixed with a little bit of the horror, mixed with a little bit of the fantasy, and of course, if you're fans of Lovecraft, you definitely have to check this out.
Yeah, Journey Smollett stars in that, and she was, she played Black Canary in the the Birds of Prey, the yada 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 Emancipation of Harley Quinn, blah blah blah, long-winded subtitle. But
no surprise, they just said, okay, let's just call it Birds of Prey because this title ain't selling.
Yeah, just call it Birds of Prey, right? But here, Lovecraft Country, she's just phenomenal. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, she should be nominated for an Emmy for her performance in that.
Totally agree.
Really is just blows you right out of the water with that character. But that's a different podcast, I'm sure, because we're the Jupiter's Legacy podcast right now. So let's talk about this. We already kind of ran down the cast in our previous episode, but there were a few new additions that I thought I'd run down really quickly that made their debuts in episodes 3 and 4. So Ian Quinlan primarily is introduced as Hutch, who is a very notable character for this overall story arc. Is someone you need to pay attention to, especially his interactions with Chloe, which I will not spoil for those who are not aware of it.
Right.
So keep an eye on him. But he's played by Ian Quinlan, who has appeared in episodes of Gotham and also Orange is the New Black. Kurtwood Smith plays Old Man Miller in episode 4, who's a pretty notable actor. He's been in a lot of things. I first became a fan of his because when he played Clarence Boddicker in the 1987 movie RoboCop.
Of course, I was like, this chap looks familiar. And in fact, thank you for confirming that, Charles. So it is the robot.
That's Clarence Boddicker, the kind of the bitches leave guy from RoboCop, if you remember that.
So memorable.
Yeah,
so memorable.
Right? So he's just a very fun actor to watch. Very, he's always on and very talented. A lot of fans probably recognize him as playing Red Foreman on That 70s Show, if you're at all familiar with that show. And if you're a Star Trek fan, you probably know him as playing the Federation President in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Okay. And if you're a DC Comics fan, you might know him as the voice of Kanjar Ro in the Green Lantern animated movie First Flight.
Love that. I actually own that on DVD. That's how much I love that, the animated stuff from DC.
Yeah, so he's got a very diverse background. I mean, he's a great character actor, and he's fun to watch here, although at least until the point where he takes his own life, which we'll talk about. Yeah. In this
very
story.
Creepy gentleman in this one.
Yeah. We also have Meg Steedle as Jane, who is the fiancée of Josh Duhamel's character, Sheldon Sampson, in the 1929 flashbacks, who I forgot to mention last time, so I thought I'd mention her. And then we have the introduction of Franco Lopresti as Nick of Time. Get it? Nick and Nick of Time. So, yeah.
And these characters always put me to shame, Charles, because all I share with them is the name. They always choose these incredibly handsome men who go by the name of Nick, and I'm like, couldn't I, aside from just sharing the name, couldn't I have shared, these astounding good looks that
the physical attributes
this chap has?
Yeah.
Exactly. This chap has, that Nick Scratch has in Sabrina. I mean, it's like all these guys, are called Nick, and they're hot guys, in that sense. I'm like, why couldn't I get that? Why I thought it came with the name. It doesn't come with the name.
So does that mean I can, if that happens, then can I look like James McAvoy for playing Professor Charles Xavier? Just saying.
I always thought so. Exactly.
As long as we're, doing our delusions,
right.
I'd like to request that one if I could. All right.
There you go.
All right. So trivia, I don't really have any trivia about this one. There's not a lot to go back on in this series. So let's just dive into our topics. And to try to break these down a little simpler this time, I thought we could kind of concentrate these, as we talk about these 2 episodes, into the present, the 2021 settings, and the past, the 1929 flashbacks. Mm-hmm. So as we talk about the 3rd episode of Jupiter's Legacy, Painting the Clouds with Sunshine, I thought for the first topic, why don't we talk about Hutch? Because this character is introduced, and we see him. There's a part where he literally drives a van into Chloe, the daughter of the Utopian, with interesting results. And we might as well go ahead and talk about his crew involving, Jack Frost, Jacinda, and Gabby. And I'm curious about your introduction, or what you thought of this character that's being introduced, who, like I said, is going to be a major player going forward.
Well, okay, here's the thing, Charles. As I actually mentioned to you off air, the 3rd episode kind of threw me for a loop at first, because I was kind of a little bit lost in places, and I actually had to rewatch it a couple of times. And it's so strange because obviously the narrative is very, very straight. It doesn't take any crazy turns. It's not David Lynch, for crying out loud.
No,
so I get David Lynch, no problem. But here I was like, what exactly is going on here? So I eventually, after on like the 10th watch, okay, I finally get it. We're good. But
all right, so you had to watch it like 10 times just to piece it together? Or were you a little lost by the narrative?
Yeah, I was just kind of like, because I suppose maybe not having the comic background, maybe I was a little bit kind of figuring out everybody. But the impression I got of Hutch is he seems to be a very, how can I put it? Because he seems partly duplicitous, partly a little bit of a trickster, partly a little bit of a mercenary, because he almost seems to go where the money is, but he's always out for number one.
Right.
So I was actually trying to understand.
He's a scoundrel.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. He's literally a scoundrel, a rascal, and more to boot. But I was just thinking to myself, so the deal is he pretty much supplies things for people. He's like a pusher for hire, or like a thief for hire.
Well, I think a supplier is probably better, more accurate. He's someone who can procure things.
Yeah, to obviously these incredibly nefarious people and these incredibly shady characters,
right?
From what I've noticed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the thing. Is he seems you wonder where his allegiances will lie as we progress, because here it seems like he is very much kind of all about himself. He's very much Star-Lord in his early days.
Yes.
When he was literally like working for the Ravagers. Yeah.
Well, that, and also, maybe he's more like, Star-Lord when he's, arriving on a planet and dancing around, listening to his Walkman, ready to break in and, and steal some very powerful artifact, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of vibe I got. It's kind of like pre-Star-Lord before he switched from being a Ravager to becoming a hero. And I wonder whether this might be the same kind of journey that Hutch will undergo, to where he's now doing the bidding of these people, procuring whatever artifact he has to. And I wonder where it's going to stop, and when maybe there might be this almost reality check, because it seems like he has little or no care for anybody else other than getting the job done, getting paid, and that seems to pretty much be it. And his crew are pretty much kind of there with him, even though they seem to disagree with some of the missions that he wants to go on. They're like,
right.
Oh, no way I'm doing this, dude. What the heck are you thinking? And all this and the kind of stuff. But it seems like they can pretty much handle themselves, because they are all superpowered humans.
Yeah.
They all have their power sets.
They all have abilities, and Hutch seems to be able. One of his talents, I think, is to also kind of not really manipulate, but kind of encourage people to go on these heists or whatever you want to call them with him.
He's like that smooth talking guy.
He is a smooth talker. Yeah, he. Like, especially with Jack, because Jack's talking about, well, hey, look, I just want to get out of town. I'm going to, take my van and go to Antarctica.
And isn't it weird that an Australian chap is Jack Frost?
Yes, of course it is. And maybe that's kind of funny. It's ironic.
Yeah, exactly. It's that contrast of, I don't know the last time that, well, I'm sure maybe it might snow in certain parts of Australia, but for the most part.
Right.
I don't know. It's kind of like Florida, where they see snow once every 5,000 years. So it was an interesting contrast there, but yeah. It's
my
true.
My point is that he, even though Jack is like, nope, not going to do it. Hutch still finds a way to make him do it, and then of course the very next scene that we see is that he's all crying like a baby because he's been injured or something during the heist.
Oh yes, he acts all tough, but then he really is such a very much a kind of a pushover in that sense for sure. But yeah, it seems like that is
he's like screaming bloody murder after the whole thing, right?
And also maybe you can explain something to me, Charles. I mean, I don't know if it might be explained to us later on down the line, but is Hutch also kind of a tech wizard in the sense that he devises all this tech which can do these amazing things? Because I was trying to figure out if he actually does have a power, or whether he's kind of like a Tony Stark, where he invents these gadgets and gizmos that allow him to do the things he does. Case in point, that kind of rod that he uses.
Yeah, the power rod. Yeah.
In fact, in the comics and stuff, is he actually a powered being, or does he have superpowers, or is he like this super tech wizard?
Well, I think there's going to be some things introduced later on, but to try to explain this without spoiling too much.
Yeah, I know it's tough territory for you.
Yeah, it is a little bit. Hutch wasn't the one, I think, that invented the power rod. Okay. But he is the one who is the current owner of it and has developed, a very strong knowledge of it. And he's very attuned to it, as we see in this episode, because there's one point where these guys named Linus and Kevin who confront him, and there's a very cool scene where Hutch is very laid back about it. He doesn't feel very threatened by them at all.
Exactly.
And one of the guys, Kevin, has tentacle powers or something. So he reaches out to grab this power rod, only to find out that, well, hey, Hutch doesn't have to hold the power rod in order to control it.
Yeah.
And the power rod apparently has this ability to teleport anything anywhere by voice command alone. Like in a very simple way. Basically, Hutch, in this case says shark-infested waters. And so the rod teleports Kevin into shark-infested waters, which ultimately, presumably, he is, quickly eaten by. And then he tells the rod to come back, and of course we just see a little chunk of tentacle still attached to the power rod when it returns, but no Kevin.
Yeah.
Right. So he's in that sense he's pretty powerful. I think it's this object that you wouldn't think would be all that powerful, but Hutch just his mastery of it makes it very formidable. I think.
Oh, very much so. And you do wonder at this point whether he can just control that, or whether, as I said, his powers go beyond simply this rod, and possibly what other applications and things this rod can actually do. Also, there was something else I was trying to figure out. So
I hope that answered your question, but...
Oh, it does. As always, you are able to
there's
help
a character,
me out with this
there's
stuff.
a character that I think that's going to be introduced very soon. That hopefully will... shine a little bit more background on this power rod and where it came from. So,
but also is the other, just to make sure I also got this straight, is he Star Fox's son?
That seems to be the case because his name is Hutch, and remember, Sky Fox's real name is George Hutchence.
Yes,
Hutch. So presumably Hutch is a derivation of the name Hutchence, right?
Yeah, it's like a nickname.
So it's a nickname, exactly. So it's from that last name. So, and then there's this implication, and I wanted to talk to you about this because at the end of the episode, we see Hutch in this locked room. He's working on different types of inventions.
Yeah. And
so he unpacks this new gadget that he got and starts working on whatever he's working on, whatever project that he's working on. And as the episode's closing, like the camera pans out from Hutch, who says, "Almost there, Pops." And
there's a photo of Sky Fox.
And there's a photo of Sky Fox. So there's certainly, and the implication, and having read the comics, I want to confirm this, that Hutch is indeed the son of George Hutchence.
Right.
So he's part of the next generation of heroes, if you will, even if he does act more like a, not necessarily a villain, but just more of a criminal, I guess.
Yeah, I guess could we maybe say anti-hero, possibly?
Anti-hero, I think anti-hero is a good one, possibly, yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like he's really sort of, I don't think he's not evil. Exactly. He's not a bad guy in the sense that he delights in doing bad things. Granted, he does things which are, against the law and illegal, and you probably shouldn't do on a daily basis. But I think his heart might actually be in the right place in the sense that I don't think there's malice in what he does. Yeah. So
he seems to care about his team. Trying to protect them. There's a great moment where Hutch, and everybody's in the van trying to escape from the Kulikov brothers.
The Kulikov brothers, of course.
Because almost kind of like, the Tracksuit Mafia bros from Hawkeye.
That's right.
Who I'm so glad we're getting when we get to talk to Hawkeye. I cannot wait to talk Hawkeye.
I'm so excited about
that. I'm so looking
sure.
forward to that. You would not believe how much I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, well, you and me both. And of course, what are you going to call two Russian mobsters, right? Kulikov brothers.
Kulikov brothers, perfect, right? So the Kulikov brothers are running after them, and Hutch, in a very cool use of his powers, teleports the van through a building and then right out the other side of the building, almost like Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the Eighth Dimension, which free plug we've talked about on Drunk Cinema, that it just goes right through the building and right out the other side, and then so making for a very quick escape. So just very, he's it's not so much I think that he's trying to get away, but he's also trying to protect his crew too. He's very loyal to his crew.
There is honor between thieves, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yes, he may get them injured in whatever heist they're pulling, but I think he does care about them to some extent. He doesn't wish them harm. I don't think.
Oh no, that's
why I don't think he's not looking to betray them.
No, I don't see him, being a turncoat or, betraying them in any way. Granted, when we see the way he interacts with other people, maybe his ethics and morals are a little bit questionable.
Right.
But other than that, it does seem like he cares for his immediate team. That's why, as I said, I wonder, I'm sure there's tons of potential for this character in the series moving forward because of that, because he's not your cut and dry villain, if you will, anti-hero. So I think there will be more to it as we progress. And I did like almost the Tarantino-esque thing of how him and Chloe kind of meet, because you kind of have the truck being hit, then you see like Chloe's side of the story, and before seeing this, which is very Tarantino-esque, and I like that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute. So while they're running away from the Kulikov brothers, and the van teleports through the wall of the building to the other side. And so they're all happy and whatnot. They're celebrating. And Hutch takes his eyes off the road.
Mm-hmm.
And then who just happens to walk into view but Chloe, the Utopian's daughter. So Hutch tries to avoid hitting her, slides the side of the van right into her, because it spins around. And, of course, Chloe, because she's so strong and invulnerable, presumably, she just stands there while the van just bounces off of her.
That's right.
And,
she makes, I think, like a dent in the truck itself. She's actually, and I believe she actually is knocked to the ground, but she gets up pretty quickly right after that.
That's true. Yeah. There was a little bit of impact from the blast. But
because she was caught off guard, so she wasn't able to.
And the fact that, as we find out in the 4th episode, she was just freaking stoned out of her mind.
Not to mention she was stoned out of her mind.
Yeah, so she's probably like, hey,
Yeah, and so as I said, one, totally coming out of nowhere, and secondly, she is high, so.
Yeah.
The mind-altering and probably body-altering drugs are probably don't help when it comes to that.
Yeah, but immediately, Hutch's crew thinks, well, hey, it's the Utopian's daughter. She's going to stop us. So they attack her.
Right.
They go all villain versus superhero on her. And Elena just kind of, because she's so out of it, she just doesn't really, she's kind of confused about what's going on. And she does this thing for a moment where she recognizes Hutch. So
that's
again,
right. They have that kind of knowing look.
Yeah, she's like, "Don't I know you?" And at that moment, Hutch probably doesn't want her to recognize any more of who he is.
Right.
So he teleports off to like Idaho, and Chloe notices that something fell out of the truck in this case, and so she kind of like grabs whatever's in the case, which we find out later what it is.
Right, and I think it's a good point to showcase how strong Chloe really is, how powerful she is, because she's on the ground, she's being blasted by these cold waves at first, which seem to like barely faze her. She kind of gets up, and then gets blasted by wind, and with one punch knocks the girl into orbit.
Right.
And then just grabs the bag and kind of heads off.
Right.
Which shows you how powerful this chick actually is. I was like, wow, she is. She should probably be the next Utopian, and not her brother.
Not Brandon. Yeah. Not Paragon. Yeah.
Yeah. Just looking at the power set, that's what I'm saying.
Well, it does. It does. So far, it seems that Chloe's more powerful, or there's so much potential there, but obviously she's very undisciplined, and
oh yes,
and very much not the hero like Brandon wants to be.
not at all.
So,
yeah.
And we'll talk about more about Chloe when we get to our next episode here. But anything else about Hutch you want to talk about?
As I said before, I was just super curious on where we go from here with this character, and just sort of possibly even finding out more about the history between him and Chloe and how they know each other and how far back they go and all that. So I'm very, very curious about that, and I don't know about his. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, it's almost like they had their own meet cute moment, if you're at all familiar with that term, right? Where two characters, it's that moment where they meet for the first time and sets off a potential romance or what have you.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens down the line, and I wonder how much more we'll see of Hutch's motley crew of thieves.
Yes,
because they were fun, but I have to admit they seemed a little bit kind of almost throwaway characters.
Yeah,
but I mean, I don't know. You having read the comics, Charles, do these folks play a bigger role, or are they just as throwaway in the comics as they were in the show? At least from what we've seen,
they're kind of they're not important. They're just kind of like background characters almost.
Okay.
Hutch is a major player. Hutch is somebody, like I said, you need to watch. Mm-hmm. But the crew, not so much, unless they decide to develop them. Because we were talking about this last episode that the TV series really seems to be trying to expand greatly about what the comics is doing, or what's been revealed in the comics so far, I should say. So consequently, it's hard to say if they could develop these characters. One of them was knocked into orbit, like you said. So who knows if she survived, right?
Hopefully her girlfriend will come to her rescue.
Yeah, I don't know if, presumably, hopefully, Jack Frost, we might see him again, maybe, but if we don't, we don't. It's not, as far as the comics are concerned, I don't think it matters. But
okay, again, so don't play a pivotal role.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect it, but I will leave room for that they could develop these characters more, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, I was just wondering because I said my impression was just, these are kind of throwaway characters that are just there, like almost. I'm not saying wallpaper because I don't want to seem too mean to them. Yeah. But yeah, if we don't see them again, I wouldn't be surprised.
They were pretty forgettable characters. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So if there's nothing else about Hutch or Chloe for this episode, at least that we're talking, let's go back, way, way back to 1929 as we catch up with Sheldon Sampson, who's having some problems, as we find out. And we get to learn a lot more about George Hutchence, Hutch's presumed father. And we could also talk about Walter and Jane in this segment.
Sure.
So, George, we find out, like I said, a lot about. We get a lot of backstory. We find out that he has this morning routine with 99 eggs that have been boiled to various degrees. And, he's accustomed to this lavish lifestyle, this rich playboy. And it's almost like, George Hutchence is kind of almost the Bruce Wayne to Sheldon Sampson's Clark Kent, right? A little bit?
Nice. Yes, I like that concept. Yeah, it very much works.
So, but because of the 1929 stock market crash, as we find out through this, George has lost his money. And even he's losing his home by the end of this episode. Yeah. So I'd be curious to see where he goes from here. I kind of know where he goes from here, having read the comics, but I don't want to spoil it. So I want to get your thoughts on George, because up till now we haven't really learned much about him. So what did you make of this character, Nick?
Well, that was why, as I said, he's the character where I got very much the Lovecraft Country vibes from, because he reminded me of that very, wealthy family of Aryans, let's say.
Right, right. Yes.
that was the kind of vibe I got from this chap, and also because kind of the old timey feel, and the fact that he's waited on hand and foot, and the fact that he wakes up listening to the same song every day.
Right.
I think to myself, wouldn't you be sick of it by a certain point? Because we're supposed to, I guess, believe that every day he starts his little record player, and we're hearing, painting the clouds with sunshine. Yeah. So I think to myself, you hear this every single day when you wake up, but
which is by Jean Goldkette, by the way. Just thought I'd mention that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm a sucker for that kind of music. I have to say, I do like me some old timey kind of music, so I did enjoy that.
Kind of like old radio, painting the clouds with sunshine.
I love it with all the scratches that it can have. I don't know why, just for some reason it's.
I like it too. Yeah.
There's something about that kind of going back in time to a place that was so far removed from where we are today. So I love that. But yeah, it's the drastic change in his life. I'm sure will probably leave him pretty traumatized, and we see that he does look kind of pretty traumatized. Because at first I think it seems like his wealth is slowly but surely being eroded. Because at first it seems like he's still able to have the staff and all his beautiful things going on in the early days, should we say,
he has his Alfred-like butler, Cuthbert.
That's right. And he's still able to kind of have everything going on. I mean, shortly after Black Tuesday happened, where, of course, everybody's losing their stuff, and he's almost pretending that nothing has changed for him, that he's still got all this lavish stuff and everything's going well for him. And then when he's suddenly kind of stripped down from 99 eggs or whatever it is to 1, it is so...
That's when it really hits him, I think, perhaps, that...
In this huge, empty, bare room, which used to be surrounded by staff
servants
and eggs
and whatnot. Yeah, exactly. All these, rows and rows of eggs, so this complete lavish waste. And now he's forced to just the one egg. So it's a pretty powerful moment, and I think it's where he realizes, that how far he's fallen.
Yeah, because maybe he thought he was untouchable.
Yeah,
maybe he thought, this is how I'm going to live and die forever. I won't ever have to worry about money or anything of this nature. And suddenly he sees himself reduced to a lifestyle which he probably never thought he would have to go through in his lifetime. So I think it's probably quite the turning point for the character. It's probably obviously going to influence where the character goes from here and what he does and so on. Added to that, he's probably not the world's best friend at first when he comes. I mean, later on, I think he does show a little bit more of it. But at first, he seems barely interested when he's told that Sheldon has kind of lost it and just can't get over his father's death and everything else that has come of that. He's like, yeah, okay, I'll go see him at some point. It's very almost, he almost like kind of waves it away. It's like they were telling him, you have to do your laundry kind of thing. It's not like your friend really needs you.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll get to it at some point, know.
It's almost like George Hutchence, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but.
No problem.
But it feels like, if George Hutchence is the Bruce Wayne to Sheldon Sampson's Clark Kent, it almost feels like George is like Bruce Wayne or essentially is Batman if he acted like Tony Stark and not Bruce Wayne.
That's right.
Right? Because he's partying, he thinks he's a playboy, and he's very
self-centered.
Very self-centered, very cocky, arrogant, and not so much like, the Bruce Wayne that we're familiar with from the comics.
Sure.
It's almost like Bruce tries to pretend to be a playboy. He tries to pretend to be that, that foppish, vapid billionaire. But George is that vapid billionaire, right? Or at least he was until he lost his money. So now he's just vapid. He has no money. And we'll see where that takes him.
But it's curious with that game.
Does that make sense?
When he finds... Oh, it totally does. I very well put, Charles. But what I thought was incredibly was great about the whole thing is when he eventually does decide to get off his butt and go and see his friend.
Yeah.
And obviously he encounters Sheldon basically, in his eyes, ranting and...
Because remember, Sheldon had a seizure.
That's right.
Yeah.
And yeah, because we left off with this image of the island in his mind, and the fact that he said he had to get there, and the voice, I believe, of his father telling him he had to go to this island.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I believe, where we left off.
Yes.
And so, yeah, and the fact that he obviously encounters Sheldon, in his mind, talking to himself. And when in Sheldon's case, he's having visions of his dead father, but probably not in the nicest of ways, where his father, literally almost like what his father would look like if he came up from hell.
Or a zombie, perhaps.
Or a zombie.
Yeah.
Of course, because obviously with the cuts and everything else, or
yeah.
maybe unfortunately what he looked like in the casket. I don't know. But,
right. After splatting himself on the pavement, probably, yeah.
Yeah, because obviously that's the last memory he has of him, so probably that's what stayed in his mind and not what his father looked like before he killed himself.
Right.
But yeah, and George just sees this man yelling and screaming, and he's like, yeah, the man, he's totally lost it. But at the same time, he comes across these drawings that Sheldon has been doing, creating throughout this crazy fugue of his. And it seems like he knows more than we think he would, because he takes them away almost very secretively. And at first I thought to myself, is he backstabbing Sheldon? I mean, kind of going in behind his back and
remember Sheldon had torn them into pieces.
Yeah.
Like he'd drawn all these circles on top of circles on top of circles.
And the windmill. And
the windmill and whatnot, yes. But he tore up the drawings, presumably in frustration. But George sees something. So he kind of, like you said, he does gather them up. And he's kind of intrigued. It's almost like, and he feels, he talks about this to Sheldon later. He says it's almost like a puzzle. And, there's something here, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah, because then he reveals to Sheldon that he has been studying these drawings of his. Because at first it seems like he's almost like sneakily taking them away and doing all this research by himself, unbeknownst to Sheldon. But then he does open up to him saying, this is what I've been doing, this is what I'm seeing.
Right.
And I'll give credit to George at some point, because he does seem to talk Sheldon down somewhat when he decides to be a good friend or decides to play the role of the friend. It seems he's able to calm him down somewhat. And of course, his fiance obviously plays a huge part in that too, in kind of bringing him out of this madness, if you will. It's which is obviously grief. I'm seeing it as a manifestation of his grief for his father. We of course know it's also the visions that he's been having of late.
Yeah.
So I thought it was, and I have to.
But from their perspective, though, it just appears as madness. That.
Yes.
So they don't know what George is actually seeing. Or excuse me, I keep confusing the characters. So I'm sorry. Sheldon is actually seeing.
No, yeah, he's having these visions and what have you. Yeah, so and we, the audience, I think, those who don't know about the comics, to think to themselves as well, has Sheldon completely lost it?
Yeah.
Or is there more to it? And I think it adds that extra thing for those who will come in completely cold when it comes to this stuff, not knowing, because you could play it easily as this is simply a mind trip he's going on because he's been traumatized, and because he is dealing almost with this, I guess we must say PTSD, if you will, from getting over his father's death.
Right.
So it could play as just pure insanity, or the fact that he's had a meltdown.
It makes you question whether what he's experiencing is actually real or not.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
Like, is he mad, or is he actually, seeing something important here? And we'll see.
He's drawn.
Yeah, and Walter, Sheldon's brother, is concerned. That's why he and Jane actually went to George to try to see if George could help Sheldon. Like, hey, look, you haven't been around to see him. We're very worried about him since his seizure. He's, he's being very distant and, doing these crazy drawings and whatnot. So
and ranting to himself.
Right. So, so when George does go to see him, and especially when he confronts him, like, hey, I kind of see this windmill in this picture. What's up with this? And George thinks that windmill is just something that maybe it's like a memory that Sheldon must have forgot.
Yeah.
Because Sheldon, as far as Sheldon knows, he's never seen that windmill before.
In fact, because in that moment where it seems like Sheldon calms down, he's just as surprised because he keeps having these flashback moments of the windmill, this American flag, and other images crop up. But as you said, it almost seems like either somebody's removed these memories of his.
Right. And Walter gets kind of pissed. He's like, look, you're just, making him crazier with all these talks about the drawings.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of feeding his fantasy. And, here you are living in your own fantasy world because you're trying to hide the truth behind your flowers and sunshine. But I know that you've lost all your money.
And isn't it just so easy for George when things are going bad saying, I just paint the clouds with sunshine.
Right.
Of course you're going to say that when you have like the billions of dollars and not a care in the world. It's very easy to say that to somebody when you don't have a care in the world. He's like, and then he maybe realizes he's brought violently down to earth when he doesn't have anything. I'm like, paint the clouds with sunshine now, buddy. Try. Go ahead.
Right. Well, and Walter the realist is just pointing this out to him because Walter is great at calling people out on their little fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, you're off in this fantasy world, but here's the reality: you're broke. So, what are you doing trying to mess with my brother like this?
Yeah, it's true. And it's so but I do like the whole dynamic between George and Sheldon. And it's clear that they've been friends forever if they are calling on George for help.
Right.
I mean, we had gotten an idea of this in the first 2 episodes, but it was also unclear how deep their relationship actually did run. And here we get the idea that they must be pretty tight if Walter is specifically going to George, because it seems like somebody Sheldon would listen to.
Yeah, and I think this relationship, it's good that they're doing this now. Because, we haven't really seen George as Sky Fox yet.
No. In fact, we've only heard about him through stories.
We heard about, that he betrayed the team, betrayed the Union, and, he turned supervillain on them. And everybody's kind of worried. As we're told at the beginning of this episode, there's like this radio broadcast that, it's the 40th anniversary of Sky Fox leaving the Union. So we're worried that there might be an attack. That Sky Fox might attack or something. So
that was probably why I saw it so creepy, or shall we say so kind of deceptive of him when he takes the drawings away for the first time. Yeah. Or should we say the kind of crumpled up drawing. It's like, because I had in my head the story that Sheldon and Walter had exchanged of Sky Fox betraying them. So I'm like, is this where the betrayal begins?
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. So you were seeing this more as, we know that Sky Fox, George becomes Sky Fox, who becomes a villain.
Mm-hmm.
So you were seeing this as like, these are the first steps toward that. That we knew he's going to turn into a bad guy.
Yeah, or he's kind of playing both sides in the sense that he's very two-faced, if you will, to where he's going to hang around with the superheroes, or should we say the Union, till it suits him, while he's actually working on his own personal projects in the meantime.
But it does seem, almost it seems like he does care about Sheldon.
Yes, at this point in time it does, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any sense of betrayal yet.
No.
So he's just, I think that George is just interested. He's like, he sees this as a puzzle because, like Batman, like Bruce Wayne, being a detective, perhaps, maybe he finds that intriguing, and so he's the one to solve this puzzle for Sheldon.
Yeah, and then he sends him off with like the coordinates or whatever it is to get to where he has to get to.
Right. So we'll see what happens, but I think it was good to see this now before we see him as Sky Fox, and maybe this relationship that we're seeing in 1929, how much that impacts who they are in 2021.
Oh, very much so. I mean, we had, of course, addressed the fact that sometimes flashbacks can be counterproductive, i.e. in shows like Arrow, for example. But here they totally make sense. They are playing, I will say, a little bit fast and loose with all the time stuff, in the sense they're kind of going back and forth, but sometimes in totally random places. But I do see the method to the madness. In the sense, I'm like, what the heck is that doing there? Why are they cutting so violently here? Why is it? I think there is some methods to this.
Okay.
I was thrown off a little bit as I said in this episode, but other than that, I see what they're doing. And I said it's not complacent, it's not counterproductive. It makes sense, and I think we'll be probably more satisfied once we get to the end of the show because it will all fit together nicely. I'm like, oh, now. It'll be probably one of those shows that you will probably appreciate even more so watching it for a second time, knowing what you know by that point.
Right.
I think.
But you can go back the second time around and kind of like, oh, and now I see how that fit and set up things for later on.
It gives it rewatchable value, I think.
Yeah. So do you think there are too many transitions back and forth from the past to the present and vice versa?
As I said, there were moments I just thought purely from an editing perspective where it seemed like they were cutting pretty fast and quick between scenes of here and now. And I think it might have thrown people off if you're not paying 100% attention. Yeah. If you're suddenly staring down at your phone and you look up and like, where are we now? It's one of those shows where I think it almost demands your almost complete attention. That's why I said I actually to put my phone down. So okay, I'm leaving that there, putting it on silent, and I'm waiting till the episode is over to look at my phone.
I think I think you're onto something. I think this is probably why some people haven't really clicked with this show. Is that, especially critics, is that half the time they're multitasking, and I agree with you. I think this is a show that wants you to like put down your phone for like all of 45 minutes or whatever.
Yes.
Watch the damn episode. You don't have to, constantly tweet or, post things on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, or, look up things on the internet. Just watch the episode. And maybe if you're sitting there actually paying attention to the thing, you might appreciate it more. I
mean, I don't want to generalize, but I think that's how the average viewer watches things these days.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too. And I think
they're engrossed in the show and they enjoy it. But at the same time, they have to have the phone in their hand and be messing around with it while they're watching the movie or the show or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's God forbid this show isn't showing you, like, all these, punch-out superhero fights every 5 seconds to hold your attention. It's a drama. It's going to have pauses, and people are using those, I think, to do other things, like look at their phone or whatever. Maybe they're just not as interested. Who knows? But because of that, I think it's affecting their understanding of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why I think it's also a result of maybe shows that are dumbed down even more so because they take into consideration people looking at their phones. But that's a whole new conversation.
I think you're right. I mean, that might be the CW's stock and trade right there. That we've done these things that catering to. We know we have a younger audience that isn't going to pay attention, so there's no point in doing like a quality production, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's depressing. To think about.
Look at you, Supergirl.
Yeah, a little bit. Or Legends of Tomorrow, perhaps. Yeah, a little bit.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I still enjoy Legends. It's a fun little show, but it does, a little bit. All right. Anything else about this episode?
No, I mean, as I said, I found it a little bit confusing here and there, but I really enjoyed it. I thought the direction was good, the actors were good, and I was looking forward to seeing them again because the big question here is George's transition, as in now that he's lost everything from having everything to having nothing. We want to see where he goes from here and how he plays into the whole concept of how does he become Sky Fox?
Yeah, because
obviously, I assume Sheldon's going to involve him like, I landed this really sweet deal, dude. You kind of have to get in on the action. I wonder. That's what I'm assuming. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm assuming.
Well, it's pretty important because, George is now one of the few characters in this 1929 storyline that actually believes Sheldon's visions, perhaps.
He's the only
he may not really understand them, but he is giving Sheldon the benefit of the doubt here, which is more than obviously his brother and his fiance are doing right now.
Yeah, they're waving it off as insanity.
Right.
And just maniacal ravings.
Yeah, just totally dismissing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. That George might be the one to try to back up whatever Sheldon's talking about with the others. All right. What's your rating for this story?
I give this 9 out of 10 gramophones.
Excellent. Well, I like this one a lot. I especially, I'm finding myself enjoying the 1929 storyline more a little bit.
You know that I would actually be happy with just the 1929 stuff. It could be so interesting to do just that way.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the Today stuff, but there's something about that 1920s stuff that I really, really like. Could be because I'm watching older movies. Maybe it's that, but I'm really loving this.
Yeah, I mean, it appeals to more like if you're a fan of Golden Age superheroes or older films, like you said, you might gravitate toward this a little bit.
It makes it more of a period piece, which is nice.
Yeah, it is. But because this is a generational saga, that's why we're going back to different periods, back and forth, because we're dealing with two different generations of superheroes here. So,
of course,
in their various eras, I give this one 8.5 out of 10. Eggs boiled to various degrees.
And I love that he knows which ones his friends would eat. He's like, she's going to have a 15, he's going to have an 22. I love that.
Well, I think that shows that George is actually pretty intelligent.
Yeah, in the sense that nothing is, in the sense he pays attention to detail.
Yeah, he's vapid, a lot of ways, being this, this lavish playboy. Like I said, almost like a Tony Stark playboy, not so much the Bruce Wayne. But he is intelligent underneath. There is something underneath all that flash. There's some substance there, a little bit.
Yeah, because to be able to know the various degrees of 99 eggs and what people would like,
right?
As you said, it shows that there's
and if he is that intelligent,
the cogs are turning.
And if he is that intelligent, that makes him a very dangerous villain, right?
Yes, it does.
Right. So it makes probably people underestimate him quite a bit. Yeah. Because he does have this playboy facade.
So he could be kind of like Batman in the sense of playing them all for fools, making them think that he is so superficial when there's actually much more than meets the eye.
Yeah, this might be taken that Bruce Wayne disguise taken to an extreme almost.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So that's our episode 3. So let's move on to All the Devils Are Here, episode 4 of Jupiter's Legacy. So in this one, I thought we could, for the first topic, talk about 2021 again. But this time, in this episode, we get to learn a lot more about Chloe Sampson, the daughter of the Utopian and Lady Liberty, Brandon's sister. And why don't we go ahead and talk also about Nick of Time, which really should be Nick.
Lamest superhero name ever.
Which should be Nick O Time, right? Nick of Time. But
yes,
I think that's a little better at least. And let's talk about Jana, who tries to be a friend to Chloe, but Chloe isn't really convinced that she's a friend of Chloe. So we were introduced to Chloe obviously in the first episode where she showed up completely hammered for family dinner, and we know that went horribly. And now we get to really see how far she's fallen, or about to hit rock bottom, essentially. So what did you make of Chloe as we kind of explore Chloe's world, and also the way it kind of ties in with the episode we just talked about with her encounter with Hutch? From her perspective.
Well, the first thing that came to mind to me was self-destructive. That was pretty much immediately what kind of screaming at me was.
It's pretty obvious, right? Yeah.
She's literally on the path to self-destruction, and it's possibly a coping mechanism of hers because of the fact that she is estranged, if you will, from her parents. She doesn't really have anybody, and I think she plays the whole super popular party going stuff in certain things, but I think at the end of the day, she knows she's alone because these people are either sycophants who just hang around her because she is who she is and not because of the person, if you will. It's the outside. It's the title that she has, the reputation that she has, not because they are genuinely her friends. These are the superficial, shallow people that will follow the celebrity around, just almost, live in their shadow or should we say bask in their light, if you will. And when the chips are down, these are the first people that will leave you. Yeah, and we see that pretty much. Or we get an idea if that's what it is.
Right. They're just they're friends for the celebrity more than the actual person, that makes up the celebrity. That's it's very sad, but I think it's a very modern take right now because of, just the whole, I want to say, celebrity / social media influencer world that we live in, where people that are just famous for being famous have kind of taken over. You've got people on YouTube have become celebrities.
And I actually see when I'm looking at whose birthday it is today, it's like famous YouTube. I'm like, next to Clark Gable and, these are, okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you've become famous for being on YouTube, that's great for you, but
more power to you.
Yeah, more power to you. But, maybe it's because of my age. I'm a little older. I think of, well, hey, are you a sports athlete, notable sports athlete or a movie star or, an author perhaps or a television personality, but someone that's is on a TV show perhaps, but I guess technically now YouTube has become that medium. So in a lot of people's eyes, especially in the eyes of millennials and younger, Gen Zs, that's become that's their celebrity, their versions of celebrity. So that's who they go to. And Chloe, I think, is a very, it's a timely representation of that.
It is. I mean, or TikTokers recently, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. So
which all the kids are talking about, but
all the kids. Yeah. Hey, fellow kids.
Exactly. Hey, fellow kids.
If you're familiar with that Steve Buscemi meme at all.
Yes. But yeah, and you nailed it. I think that's literally what she is, because we see that she, I guess, from what I once again have gathered, is she is a model. And that's pretty much what she does for a living, is that she models for, or has an agent who finds her these gigs where she models either, for cars, or in this case, it was a car, the gig we saw her at, where she's basically going into these very suggestive poses as these models are wont to do, like lying on the car and almost embracing it. And
exploiting the fact that she's the daughter of a very famous superhero.
That's right. But, in fact, because that's, I guess, what some people think.
Superheroes, I should say, yes.
And that's why some folks think to themselves, did she get there on merit, or did she get there because she was born to people who were famous?
Right. It's...
Yeah, I'm not saying that
kind of like
can't be folks who...
Yeah, the children of celebrities that become celebrities simply because they're the children.
Yeah, and that's not saying that they can't make their own careers.
Through nepotism, right?
True, but then of course there isn't. As I said, I mean, there's no reason why they can't make their own careers, as some have done. I mean, I think of folks like Carrie Fisher, for example, who made a great career for herself, coming from incredibly famous parents. But she became famous because she had incredibly famous parents. Before she became Carrie Fisher,
because she did have famous parents, she probably got through doors in Hollywood that she probably normally wouldn't have gotten through as easily.
I'm sure there was a fast track for sure.
But she did rely on her own talent after that.
Right.
Like,
after that,
her parentage probably helped her get the gigs, but it was up to her to make herself a star from those gigs.
That's the thing, because you can get to the door through this fast track, but then if you don't have what it takes to back it up, you're probably going to be forgotten pretty soon.
Probably, yeah. If you don't have talent or just that something that the audience latches onto, that certain it that you're probably going to be forgotten, because there are a lot of, not many people really talk about actors like Peter Fonda all that much. He did have he did have some celebrity status, but he's certainly not as known as well as his father, Henry Fonda, right?
Of course. It's like, as I said, Carrie Fisher could have been always known as Debbie Reynolds. Yeah. Carrie Fisher could have been known the rest of her life as Debbie Reynolds' daughter, but that was not the case, because she made a name for herself.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, but I think it's the opposite here when it comes to Chloe, because that's what she is living, she's getting her gigs through, because she is the daughter of these two. And she leads an incredibly, as I said, destructive lifestyle between drugs and alcohol and random hookups and all sorts of things. And she just seems very cynical when it comes to the whole superhero thing. I think she's bordering on cynicism and hatred. Mm-hmm. It seems like she has almost a blind hatred when it comes to superheroes.
Well, I think that's because of the hatred toward her parents, as we've talked about. Buy your kids some damn ice cream. You won't have these problems.
That's right.
I'm just saying.
But she extends that to anybody who's in any way involved with either the union or anything like that. Even one of the few people I think is genuinely her friend, she literally shuns her because of the fact that she is a superhero and wants to do the right thing. That's the kind of person you probably want to be friends with, Chloe, and you probably don't want to shun them. If something happens to you, that kind of girl will be there for you. Unlike the rest, like, let's go party and snort as much cocaine up our noses as we can.
Right. Well, she's just a natural contrarian. And that bitterness that she feels, I think, and we can psychoanalyze this because, hey, yes, I'm a professional psychologist. No, I'm not.
So am I. No, I just printed off my degree today. It's like,
exactly. I just wrote my degree on a Post-it. That's how good I am. But Chloe seems to be like, she has this bitterness toward her parents. She feels that they either weren't around for her enough or didn't give her enough love, whatever the real root of that is. But there is a bitterness towards them that she's transferring over into everything associated with them. So anything involving superheroes, she naturally feels this bitterness towards as well. And even her career, where essentially it boils down to her doing these modeling gigs because she's the daughter of a famous superhero and has powers herself.
That's right.
So she hates herself because she doesn't want to be like her parents.
In fact, I was just going to say there's definitely also some self-loathing there as well. Almost seems like she hates herself for that. That's possibly why she tries to numb the pain with alcohol and drugs and everything else, and living this very fast and loose lifestyle where it's all, should we say, a very excessive lifestyle, which, is very akin to what some celebrities have done, where they've literally self-destroyed, they've destroyed themselves because of this, because they are possibly fighting demons inside, which makes sense for also the title of this episode. So I think she's literally fighting her demons this way by numbing them and making it worse and worse and worse, which, as I said, has happened to quite a few celebrities, be they musicians, actors, or what have you.
Right.
And it's very sad. It's very sad. And I think she comes to that realization that it almost seems like she is unable to go a day being sober, which I think is very sad.
Well, if we were doing Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast, I almost suggest that Chloe is the Laura Palmer of Jupiter's Legacy, because she puts on this facade for everybody, but secretly, she has this very self-destructive lifestyle. She hates herself, hates everything around her, and because of that, she's very self-destructive. And now that facade is completely cracking as we're exploring this, because now when she does this photo shoot for this car company that essentially wants her to do the superhero pose, which is, supposedly it's because it was a shot based on a shot of her mother, Lady Liberty, holding a car above her head.
Which is reminiscent of what superhero?
Well, yes. So obviously that's a very big nod to Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman, which is iconic, as we saw recently on Superman and Lois, where they recreated the image of Superman holding that car and, above his head. So, so obviously that's a very big nod to that. And Chloe, meanwhile, takes this gig. She's told to lift up the car, so she's like, okay. And then in a fit of anger and rage and just being completely, blitzed out of her mind, she hurls the car at the people doing the photo shoot. Luckily for her, nobody was hurt. But, technically, isn't that kind of attempted assault?
It is, and no surprise. I think also there she was angry because the fact that she'd finished her cocaine. Yeah. There was no more coke. Because we saw the terrible thing is in between shots, she was constantly going to the bathroom to snort cocaine.
Yeah.
Because to kind of get her through the day, literally.
Right.
And at some point she gets to the point where, yes, that bag comes to an end and you've got none left. and which irks her, evidently, because she's like, I've got no more cocaine, I'm coming down, I'm going crazy. And then, of course, that's when she hurls the car moment. And we learn this was the last endorsement she had.
Yes.
Because apparently her manager or agent calls her saying, you're pretty much screwed, and not so many words lets her know that she's dropping her as one of her clients.
Yeah, she got dumped by her agent, and she's reeling from this, and it's at that moment when, going back to episode 3, this is when Hutch's van hits her, right?
Yes, because she's walking away after having had that call from her agent that she's been dropped.
Right, she was taking that phone call from her agent. That's what she was talking on the phone when she walked out into the street and got hit by Hutch's van. So when that case falls out of that, and this is where we kind of pick up with her side of the story.
Yeah. Chloe
goes to that case and finds what appears to be a bag of drugs, by all appearances, right?
Yes, and I'm like, of course, just because it's like in semi-powder crystalline form, what are you going to do? You're going to shove it up your nose, aren't you?
Right. It's, she has no idea what it is. She doesn't care. So she grabs it, runs off, takes it back to her place, and she, to her credit, though, she doesn't just go right into it. She does take a little sample of it, rubs it between her teeth, and tries to see what it might do to her. She gets a bit of a pretty strong buzz off of it, so she's like, well, hey, let me phone all my friends, and, hey, because my friends, I want to share with my friends. Let's all go over here and
snort this
great score I just got, right?
Yes.
So probably with friends that are just there because, not because they're her friends, but because she only has the drugs, right?
That's right. Yes, because in fact it's all about, the drugs are here. Let's get in. And it turns out they are other superpowered people like herself, other renegades, if you will, who have kind of ditched the Union. Because we do see that obviously one of them demonstrates her powers of being able to reconstruct things, or reverse things, if you will. Because obviously, to make a quick backtrack from the previous night that she had sex with Nick of Time, where that crack in the wall was from their romping.
Yeah, because it was hardcore superhero sex was what it was.
That's right.
Yeah, so so they throw instead of just throwing each other up against the wall, they throw each other through the wall, right?
Yes, it's worthy of a Homelander.
Right.
He gets. And Stormfront.
That was exactly, it was a very Homelander and Stormfront type of superhero sex scene from The Boys. Yes. You're absolutely right. There's a great comparison. And the landlord, her landlord is pissed because, hey, there's a big hole in the wall that goes right out into the street. So he's like, you're out of here. I'm evicting you. But Chloe, because she has a friend that can repair that wall, that the poor landlord is just like, look, I can't have you. You're trashing the place. You're becoming a problem, so I'm going to evict you. But her friends, because they're now stoned out of their mind from these drugs that Chloe found on the street, literally, they're just giggling and laughing at the landlord, and like, the one repairs the wall because of with her powers. So there's nothing the landlord can really be pissed about, right? So so he's like, okay.
I think he's also kind of terrified as well.
Well, yeah, because obviously he's a normal human being and they're superpowered people. So he's like, well, just keep the noise down. And as he meekly walks off, and they keep laughing at him.
And I have to say, it's one of the few times which I'm actually for the landlord in anything.
Right.
Because usually the landlord is like the buzz killer, the ball buster.
He's the worst, the worst person. I mean, go watch Spider-Man 2 if you want a good representation of how bad landlords can get.
Yeah, from the stereotypical, mustache twirling ones like, where's the rent?
Right.
Kind of thing. to those kind of things. I was actually feeling so bad for the landlord, and like, our mutual friend Zan, Charles, I'm hoping for the comeuppance here. I'm like, they really deserve their comeuppance.
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, Chloe, after I guess everybody leaves the party or whatever, Jana, who has been trying hard to help Chloe, because she's basically a good person, or at least trying to be a friend to Chloe, but Chloe doesn't think she's being a friend to her. Mm-hmm. And then, she finds that Chloe sees her that she's vomiting in the toilet, and, Chloe accuses Jana of just wanting to be like Lady Liberty, so which means that, she's angry at her mom as well, and is transferring that hatred onto Jana. Like someone who could actually help her. She's just pushing away because she reminds Chloe of her mom.
I think also it's, while she is, as you rightfully said, kind of praying to the porcelain gods there, which is you're never in the best frame of mind when you're doing that.
Yep.
But I wonder whether she's almost talking about herself. When she's like, everybody expects you to be this, and you fail, and they choose somebody else over you. It almost seems like she's talking about herself to Jana. I thought that was the vibe I was getting. It's almost like I was let down. Maybe it's another reason why she's become so estranged from her parents, because she possibly idolized her mother all her life. Yes. But then in her father's eyes, she ended up being a failure, and he chose Brendan as his successor. Mm-hmm. And maybe her mom did nothing to possibly
support
say
her, or to support her, or campaign for her, or whatever. Yeah,
that's why it almost seems
like her mother didn't even try to train her, like Utopian was training Brandon.
That was the impression I got. It's almost like that kind of the drunk in the bar who's like, one day you're a celebrity and then everybody forgets about you, kind of thing. So it seemed like the ravings of a drunk or of a stoned person.
Right. Right. And remember, she's also coming down because of, the way that Nick, this latest guy, who's probably not the first guy, by the sound.
He's one of the multiple one-night standers.
Well,
for sure.
but we find out that Nick of Time was essentially trying, he targeted Chloe in that nightclub because he wants Chloe to put in a good word with the union because he wants to join the union.
Yeah, because first he plays the guy who's like, screw the union. Yeah. I'm just like you.
Right.
I don't believe in this rubbish. And he actually, even though he seems like a total ass, he really has a great power. Yeah. I mean, that power could be really, really dangerous in the wrong hands.
Right. He could stop time. How great is that, right?
That's right. And at the end of the day, it's kind of, I'm kind of sleeping with her because of the fact that it might get me to meet the Utopian and actually get a reference to the Utopian saying, I want to join. How do I, your daughter said it's cool, you know, so.
Yeah, in the fact that, the truth comes out. And, so it's just another betrayal, like another person who's hurt me just because I'm the daughter of a famous superhero. So which ties in with her hatred toward her parents.
Which unfortunately, does happen to certain celebrities. Unfortunately, or people who know celebrities is they always are on guard on who is their friend because they are nice people or because they know certain folks. I mean, case in point, to make a very a very brief anecdote. I hang around a lot of PR people who are, of course, manage these, big country stars and what have you.
Right.
And one of the girls who I actually did become friends with told me it's very hard for me to know when like somebody wants to buy me a drink or something where they're actually interested in hanging out with me or because the people I work with.
Yeah, you don't know who's wanting to use you just to advance their own agenda, right?
That's right.
So Chloe again feels used by this guy. So it's just another reason for her to spiral into this big self-destruction. So she like takes the last of the bag of drugs, whatever's left, and she finishes off the bag and then starts having almost like her own visions, very kind of reminiscent of her father a little bit because of this drugged out haze she's in. And then she passes out and falls. She kind of passes out. She does seem to like she has an overdose, right? She falls backwards into this glass table, shatters it. She's fine, of course, but the table is completely smashed. And it just happens to be the moment where at the end of the episode, Hutch teleports in and finds her convulsing on the floor, presumably from an overdose.
Yeah, and what does he do? Like nothing. He kind of takes the bag and leaves.
Well, he's kind of mad because, I guess maybe he was looking for the bag, so he thought, well, I track Chloe down and I'll go see if she's got the bag, but finds that she's already burned through the bag, snorted it all. Like he was going to use the bag for something else, I'm guessing, that probably wasn't drug-related.
No, exactly. I mean, what was it for that big
machine or whatever he's working?
Yeah.
Maybe it was fuel for the machine that he's working on. I don't know.
Yeah, because it was almost like almost crystals, like mini crystals, if you will. It wasn't like powder, like cocaine would be. It was almost crystal-like. I mean, because in fact, that was a plot point that I was unsure of whether it was. I can't think of his name now. The one of the many shady characters he works with, who was rather stood out to me. The guy that kind of likes.
Are you talking about Big Man?
Big Man, yes. I thought that was maybe what he had to retrieve for Big Man, or was that another job that he had to do for Big Man?
I don't know. I think it was a job that he was supposed to do for the Big Man, but maybe they decided, or maybe I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, that's right. The Big Man was asking Hutch where his quantum modular was.
Right.
So maybe he was supposed to be building this machine for the Big Man.
And this thing was one of the ingredients, if you will, and the chemicals needed to do it.
Right. To design this machine, perhaps. Yeah.
And I actually wanted to say Big Man is actually a step up from Black Star.
Right.
The effects were actually really well done. I liked how, as his mood changed, if you will, almost like a Rorschach, if you will, where his face would light up and stuff, or you'd see what was behind the skin. I really liked that. I thought it was definitely a step up from Black Star. Yeah,
so here it's just like Hutch was hoping to get that bag back, but was pissed because Chloe had snorted it all, I guess.
And not to mention, Big Man will probably have his hide for this. When he's like, how am I going to tell the Big Man this now? Because it seems like it's the nth time he has failed Big Man.
Yeah, so it's not good. It's not good news for Hutch and probably his crew. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's also going through his mind because he has kind of been threatened by Big Man is fail me again, and you'll kind of be seeing what your insides look like, kind of thing. Yeah. So
right.
So I see what. Yeah, but I immediately thought she was ODing there because it was very reminiscent almost of the Pulp Fiction scene where Uma Thurman's character is ODing. And I was like, where's the adrenaline syringe? Where do you keep those?
Right. Yeah, somebody reach for that. That should be fun. Yeah. All right. She's freaking dying on me, man. Oh, sorry.
Do you have a magic marker? Draw the.
Yeah, exactly. Now I want to watch Pulp Fiction. So, see, we need you to come on Drunk Cinema so we can watch Pulp Fiction together.
Well, if ever you guys do Tarantino, give me a whistle because I'll be right there.
All right, that sounds good. Man. I'll mention it to Zan, or you can mention it to Zan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So topic number 2, unless there's anything else. Let's talk about
the way that this episode cut was pretty brutal. Yeah, it was just very brutal how it ended. Of just Chloe convulsing on the ground.
The
You're just like,
cliffhanger.
wow.
Yeah.
And once again, I so wanted to see episode 5, but I didn't. I was like, okay, Possessed with So Impatience. We'll get there on Friday or whenever, and we'll watch it. But it was very, very strong ending, I will say, to this episode.
So you were very tempted to jump ahead to the next episode.
I was, but once again, that countdown, I was like, okay, turn it off. Let's go watch Castlevania. We'll watch something else now.
Well, so far, since you brought it up, I've been restraining myself. I've only watched episode 4. But again, I've read the comics, so I have a vague idea where they're going.
That's right.
But we'll see. We'll see. But so far, I've been pretty good. So I've been hanging in there. I don't know how long that patience is going to last, but for right now, I've been good. Yeah. So we'll see if I can stay on the straight and narrow. So let's move on to topic 2 of this episode. 1929, let's do our flashbacks, where Sheldon, as we find out, has he's been traveling. He's gone out through the desert. He comes across this guy who's with his family. He got a broken down tire. Tries to just ask for some basic directions to the next town, and the guy is very suspicious of Sheldon. What's he want? I guess he's probably had some run-ins with some other unsavory characters. Yeah. So he's like, okay, well, I'll give you directions if you help me fix this tire.
Yes.
And then afterwards gets driven into town, and we find out that Sheldon's in Kansas. He's still having these visions of his father, trying to decide if he should call Jane for help. He eventually does, after having to give this guy his last dollar to use the telephone. And she begs him to come home and is trying to find out where he is. But before that, Sheldon runs out, goes out in the street because there's this people fighting out in the street. And he tries to go and help, but he gets beaten up. And this girl comes, finds a drawing that fell out of his pocket about the windmill, and points him in the direction of the windmill, which takes him to the old Miller farm. Right. So what did you make of Sheldon in his journey in this, as we pick up with Sheldon in 1929, where through this vision, driven haze, he finds his way to this farm that we find out is the farm from his vision, and encountering this old man Miller that's there, and the secrets that lie within.
The first thing was, I thought to myself, did he walk most of the way? Because that's a pretty long walk, going from kind of, I don't know how many states he had to cross.
Going full David Banner in the Incredible Hulk TV series from back in the day.
That's right. I'm hoping
with sad piano music accompanying him.
That's right. All we needed was the Lonely Man theme. Definitely, we needed the Lonely Man theme for sure. But you do hope that, like Bruce Banner, he was able to possibly get some rides, some parts of the way, because if not, it's like, wow, already this is superhuman for sure. The fact that he's just been walking all this such a distance.
Right.
When he eventually gets to the farm, the whole, obviously, of course, the Superman stuff could not be more evident. Of course, it takes place on a farm. It takes place in Kansas, etc. But it's
Sheldon's there, who is our Superman analog. Yeah.
But of course, to greet him there are not exactly the beautiful, the kind people that are Ma and Pa Kent. On the contrary, you have this rather grizzled, crazed old man. It's like, what do you want, kind of thing.
Well, he pulls a gun on him because, well, as far as the old man knows, Sheldon's there to rob his house. Right?
Yeah, because I think Sheldon actually goes into the house without even kind of, saying.
Well, he does say, like, hey, anybody home? And then just walks in. Starts looking around at all the pictures and whatnot, and has his back turned, and that's when, the guy draws the gun on him.
Yeah.
Old man Miller draws the gun on him. But it seems like, Sheldon tries to get the guy to open up and talk about, like, who he is. Does he know anything about the visions? But the old guy isn't very forthcoming at first.
No, until apparently he realizes that Sheldon is talking to himself, and he's one of the few people who's like, "You hear the voices too," kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like,
and then that vision of his father is telling him, "Look, this old man's just crazy.
Mhm.
You can't trust anything he says."
That's right. And because then it seems like the old man, kind of gives his own recount of how he started getting the visions and the fact about, I believe he was in the Navy, if I recall.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's when he got his visions, and he added to this, and you hear this constant whistle almost in your head. And Sheldon obviously is kind of thrown off by the fact that he actually believes that I'm talking to someone and I'm not talking to myself. Because he actually asks him, is it somebody near to you? Is it somebody he's not saying obviously it's your dad, but he's like, you must be talking to somebody near and dear to you or that you lost.
It's usually somebody close to you. That's what I think he says something along those lines, right?
Yeah, because obviously it's a shared experience that he has had too. He doesn't go too much further than that before kind of committing suicide, but we can tell that obviously there's more to it, and Sheldon starts to think to himself, maybe I'm not crazy, and maybe this is all happening for a reason.
Right. So the old man Miller kills himself with a gun, and first it's the way it's shot is like you're wondering if the old man is going to shoot Sheldon. Yeah. But then he shoots himself.
Yeah, because we cut to outside the house and we hear the gunshot.
Right.
And then we go back into the house. Yeah.
So, old man Miller is bleeding out on the floor, and Sheldon looks down at the floor where the blood is puddling.
Yeah.
And notices that it's puddling around a raised portion of the floor. So he goes down there to take a look at it because he's like, okay, that doesn't look quite right. Realizes there's a trap door under, hidden in the floor. So he pries it up. He finds this basement below. Now, why he isn't immediately taken over by the smell, I have no idea. But he goes all the way downstairs and then realizes that there's a bunch of corpses down there.
Joy.
And, yeah, it's like something out of the final ending of the Friday the 13th. Was it part 3? 3D when or maybe like when Jason had his mother's corpse.
Yeah.
That
it's
one.
It's all very.
You know what I'm talking about,
yeah.
or Psycho or something
Psycho.
where
when
Norman Bates has his mother's corpse, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I immediately went to Hitchcock with that for sure. Yeah, it's very much the vibe I got. Yeah. And between the smell of the guy of old man Miller just killed himself and the corpses below, you think to yourself, yeah, it's amazing how Sheldon is able to keep his composure throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, right. So he realizes that they're all seated around this table, and there's drawings on the table very similar to what he scribbled on the wall. So he sees a watch very similar to his father's, and then he hears the farmer's voice reading out numbers like coordinates. So, and around the table, Sheldon starts seeing this vision of a group of individuals. They include himself, his brother Walter, George, Grace, Fitz, and 2 others that he doesn't know at this point.
Yes.
So essentially what he's having a premonition of is what? The Union, right? Or
I'm
going to become the Union.
Yeah, maybe the first iteration of the Union. Yep.
Yeah, yep. So that's a pretty big thing. And, Sheldon comes out of the house. We don't know if, he's going to have a breakdown or whatever. And then we see him coming out of the house much more together at this point. Like something transformative has happened. And Sheldon has seemed to have regained his composure so that suddenly we see Walter driving up in the driveway. So presumably he must have called Walter, right?
Either that or when he called his fiancée, they were able to trace the call. I don't know if they could trace the call because I suppose, they probably did because they maybe had.
But then how would he know that? How would he know that Sheldon went to Old Man Miller's farm?
This is true. Yeah, but I suppose maybe they narrowed it down to maybe where the city could be because I guess then they had the operator who had given the collect call to his fiance, and maybe that's where she was able to, I guess, retrace it through the operators. Where does this call come from exactly? Because I guess they probably are able to do that. I don't know how the whole mechanism works, but that's the only way I can think of.
See, I would go the Occam's razor route and go like, well, Old Man Miller had a phone, and after Sheldon got his composure back, he called Walter to pick him up.
Which could work as well, sure.
Yeah, so that's, like I said, that's the simplest explanation. So that's what it seems like. That would be the natural one, because otherwise, how would they know he went to the farm? So
true.
So Sheldon leaves the house. He says, like, he's looks like a completely different man. He says, "I'm ready to come home now," but we still hear the farmer reading out those coordinate numbers. And Sheldon's presumably still hearing that, right?
Yes, so he tries to make play serene and such, and all put together on the outside. Maybe also not to worry Walter either, but his mind is thinking forward of, how do I get to this place? What do these coordinates mean? Yeah.
So have you pieced together what the coordinates might mean?
I mean, I'm assuming they are the position of where the island is, but...
There you go. Yes. I think that's a very safe assumption. Yes.
That's the thing. So I guess as soon as he gets home, he's probably going to look them up on the chart. And it happens to be an island in the middle of nowhere. And,
right.
And off they go, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll find out. But I say you're very close to being on this something there. So
okay.
I say that's a very strong theory. Let's put it that way. Okay.
Well, no, I that's why I'm definitely excited to see what happens next for sure.
Yep. All right. Anything else about this episode?
I just really want to give kudos to the direction. Once again, I just really like I love the color palettes used in this one.
The atmosphere and the look of it. Yeah.
It was all very, very well done. And also great performances from all involved. And I think it's a very compelling story. Once again, I think folks who like their superhero stuff, this one, might require a little bit more attention on your part, but I think it's so far, granted, okay, we still have episodes to go, but I think so far it's definitely worth the time and worth checking out. And, from somebody who's never read one page of Jupiter's Legacy, Charles, I'm totally sold with this. I really like the angle and enjoy it. So far, I'm very, very happy with what we've seen these first 4 episodes.
So, having watched, half the season so far, because we're now at the halfway point.
Yep.
Does it encourage you to want to check out the comic book?
I think, yeah. I mean, I'm already kind of,
like you did with The Boys.
Yes, I do believe that if the quality continues like this, I'll definitely want to check it out. But even if it doesn't, I might just want to, for my own personal, interest and reference, I might just pick them up anyways, just to see what it's like. I believe you said this covers the first miniseries.
Yeah. I think that's what we're addressing in this so far. Yeah. With hints of that Jupiter Circle spin-off series here and there. Yeah. The little elements that are being drawn from that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what's your rating?
I'm going to give this one 8.5 out of 10 creepy houses.
Okay. That's good. I'm going to go a little less on this one as well. So I'm going to give this one 8 out of 10 trapdoors hidden in the floor.
Perfect. And you'd actually mentioned, of course, Chris Sprouse being involved with this, with the comics.
Yes, for the Jupiter Circle spin-off series.
Yeah, because I'd actually asked Zan the last time we did the Gold Standard about this. She hasn't watched it yet, apparently, but apparently Chris has pretty much watched the whole thing already. And it would be interesting to see what his thoughts were on it, because she didn't disclose his thoughts just yet, but I know that Chris has watched it, but apparently Zan still has to sit down and watch this properly. Yeah,
I don't know if she will, but we'll see.
Depending, I suppose, what her husband's thoughts are on it, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, that might be a factor. I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe we just need to keep asking about it, if she's going to watch it or not.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So hopefully she does, because I'd love to. Hopefully she can, listen to our podcast and see what our thoughts are about it. Hopefully you appreciate that.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. So, Phantom Zone news, just really quickly, the only thing I had was that the Marvel Cinematic Universe animated series, What If, which is something I think a lot of us are looking forward to, based on the Marvel Comics series, What If, where we have, essentially it's like what if stories, like it's right there in the title, right? Like what if, Peter Parker was gained the powers of the Hulk or whatever.
Yeah, or if
all these crazy hypotheticals.
If Agent Carter became Captain America and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that series is actually premiering on Disney Plus in August.
Ooh, so the month after Loki and Black Widow.
Originally it was rumored to appear in June, but it looks like it's been pushed back to August. But so at least we have a month announcement. We don't have a specific date yet, so we'll probably have to update you when we do, but I just want to give everybody a heads up on that if you're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be really good because the voice cast they have lined up for that is going to be phenomenal.
Is stellar. Also, isn't there further news on the MODOK TV show? The animated one, I believe.
Yeah, but I haven't really followed that, so I'm not familiar with it. Do you happen to know?
No, well, I know that apparently I think Hulu announced that it should be coming, in these next few months. Apparently, so there is going to be a MODOK series, and I'm so excited about that one.
Isn't Patton Oswalt doing the voice of MODOK?
That's exactly why I'm so excited, because Patton Oswalt will voice MODOK, and so I'm so excited just for that reason.
I think it's supposed to be kind of like an Adult Swim animated type series.
Exactly.
Or like Harley Quinn. That's on HBO Max right now. Yeah.
Which is how MODOK should be done, I think.
Right? You think? All right. Yeah, that could be fun. I need to learn more about that. I do. So, because I really enjoyed Harley Quinn on HBO Max. So
that was different
when it was on DC Universe, but I enjoyed it. It's a crazy show, and so I really enjoyed it. I recommend checking it out. It's pretty well written. All right, so we do have some Phantom Zone fan mail that I want to read really quickly.
Yay.
So once again, writing in Holly Mack, about episodes 3 and 4 of Jupiter's Legacy, the ones we just talked about. Hey, Charles and Nick. Hey, Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Man, another great 2 episodes. We get more backstory between George, Sheldon, and the others. I think the flashbacks worked a touch better this time.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder what Hutch has planned that would please his dad. Guess we're going to find out soon enough. Chloe trying to find herself at a dance club and not succeeding. Find time for herself, I guess she means. And having to answer for not helping out in the first battle or showing up at the funeral. Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
It's true.
Chloe got called out for not showing up at the funeral for their friends, right?
That's right.
Really surprised to find out that Nick has powers. This is going to be interesting. Of course, Nick would be trying to get into the superhero group through Chloe, and she saw right through it. The scenes with Sheldon at the farm are pretty intense, and I'm really wondering what's up with the pocket watch. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I think that's just symbolic of his father, right?
I do believe so, but maybe there's more to it. But
we'll see. We'll see. Really, we're hoping someone soon intervenes and gets Chloe some help after what happened at the end of episode 4. Well, we know Hutch is there, so we'll see what happens. Still showing self-restraint and only watching 2 episodes. Well, so far we are too. So we'll see how long that lasts. we got to get through 4 more. We'll see. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. So
thank you so much, Holly.
Really appreciate you writing in for these. I really do.
Exactly. Ever on the spot, and really, and I love that she's watching along with us. I really dig that.
I really dig that too. So it's nice to know that we've got somebody out there that we know and writing in and helping us discuss this show.
Yes.
So if you want to be like Holly, and I really encourage that you do, check us out at phantomzonecast@gmail.com. That's phantomzonecast@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter at PhantomZoneCast on Twitter. Facebook, of course, the Phantom Zone Podcast, or Instagram at Phantom Zone Podcast. And Nick, where can they find you and hear more of everything you're up to when you're not plotting to take over the world?
Dang it. I was trying to keep that secret,
Curses,
Charles.
foiled again.
Yes, but you saw right through that. No, well, folks, if you're fans of country music, as we did visit Kansas this time around with Jupiter's Legacy, I do host the Whiskey and Cigarettes show where we play all sorts of country music under the sun, be it traditional, today's, and everything else in between. More info about that, whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. Podcast-wise, if superhero movies are your speed, I do host Happiness in Darkness, the superhero movie podcast, where, of course, we're discussing all superhero movies under the sun. If you'd like to join me on there, you can shoot me an email at happinessanddarknesshow@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And last but certainly not least, Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, where myself, Rachel Friend, and Zan Sprouse discuss all the Best Picture winners in chronological order, from 1927's Wings to the present day. We've just hit the 50s and really enjoying that right now. So it's definitely been a fun ride so far, and I'm just loving how this is going. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. And what about you, Charles?
Well, is Rachel happy that you guys have gone to color, or is that still ways off yet?
Oh, well, we just got to discuss An American in Paris, so it was a field day for Rachel Friend.
She has been hating those black and white movies.
Yes, I know. So. She's like, yay, color!
She's kind of like Dorothy when she steps out of her home at the beginning of The Wizard of Oz after it's gone to, after the tornado, and she opens the door and it's like color everywhere.
It was actually a funny story. Well, after we finished All About Eve, which was our last, our first 1950s film, which was in black and white, and I said, next one is An American in Paris, and she's like, yay!
She already knew, and she was looking forward to that one.
Yeah, because it had been since 1939 with Gone with the Wind since we'd reviewed the movie in color. So there you go.
Wow. Okay. As for me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of the geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on the Phantom Zone podcast. So all kinds of comics, news, superhero news of my other podcasts for the Southgate Media Group, which of course includes Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, that normally I would be doing with my partner in time, Jesse Jackson, but unfortunately he's going through some very serious health issues right now. He's going to be having surgery in a couple weeks. So I'm asking as a personal favor to everybody that knows Jesse or is just, someone who listens to us here on the podcast, if you wouldn't mind, just send him your positive thoughts. Reach out if you're so inclined. Drop him a line. Say hi. He's on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW, or you can find him on Facebook at Jesse Jackson in Dallas-Fort Worth. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. I'm sure he'd appreciate the support. So just as a personal favor to me, and I'm sure Nick, we definitely want you keeping Jesse in your thoughts as we try to get him and his family through this very difficult time right now.
I already do also want to thank those who have already reached out to Jesse, because he has already been shown quite a bit of love. So definitely, thanks to the I want to say to them for also reaching out and showing their support, because obviously what Jesse's going through is not easy whatsoever, and it's incredibly tough for himself and his family, like you were saying, Charles. So I think it's in these times where your friends and those who care really, really do help a guy out.
Yeah, exactly. So as someone who's had his own very serious health issues where I ended up in the hospital, and I know how much that kind of support means.
Oh, yes.
So I'm very sensitive to that, and if anybody, you watch these superheroes on our comic book TV shows, if you want to be a superhero in your own right, please do so.
That's right.
This is a good place to do that kind of thing for somebody. So,
very well said.
Right. Thank you. In the meantime, though, a certain DJ Nick is going to be talking The Vampires of Venice with me here this coming week.
Yes, indeed.
Are you looking forward to it? Because I know I'm looking forward to this.
I hope the listeners are looking forward to it, because I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see Nick's thoughts about an episode set in Venice, Italy, that was filmed in Croatia or something?
Yes.
Instead.
I guess maybe they didn't have the budget to actually go to Venice and do it. But,
right.
Hey,
at least Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade did Venice properly, right?
Yes, that was actually filmed in Venice. So yes.
Ah, Venice. Yes.
Yeah.
But, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Nick hasn't been on the podcast for a while, but he's filling in for one of our special guest companions that unfortunately had dropped out because of the recent Noel Clark allegations and found that pretty upsetting, understandably. So I totally understood that. But Nick, we had us hold in the schedule. So Nick, I want to thank you publicly for helping us out there.
Well, hey, so that's my pleasure. And if I get to talk Doctor Who, it's a very easy thing to do for me. And plus, I get to come on after John Takis, who did a wonderful, wonderful job. And it was great. Right. May I say to hear John?
Yeah, we
again.
talked Enlightenment from the Peter Davison era. I had a lot of fun with John. I was really glad to get him back on. If you couldn't tell if you've listened to the episode.
The enthusiasm is very much there. And as I said, so I get to follow, our mutual friend John Takis. So it's, I feel even happier for that too.
Yeah, and I'm still going to call out the Gold Standard crew as they're waiting to hear what episodes they want to talk about as I'm preparing the schedule. So all of you on the Gold Standard Oscars podcast are on notice right now.
Mm-hmm. They have been warned.
I'm calling you out, yes. All three of you. All right. Just putting it out there. I know, I don't mean to pressure, but it would be nice. Let's just put it that way. All right. And also, let's see, Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast, where certain Zan Sprouse from the Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, joins me as we talk Twin Peaks and David Lynch. And right now we're going through 3 episodes of Hotel Room, this very obscure 1993 HBO series. Anthology series, and we're going to be discussing the second episode coming up next week that features Griffin Dunn and Mariska Hargitay from Law & Order Special Victims Unit, if you can believe it. So that should be pretty interesting, right? And then coming up after that one, it's going to feature Crispin Glover. So that should also be very interesting to have Crispin Glover directed by David Lynch. Stay tuned for that. And then last but certainly not least, Drunk Cinema, that I also do with Zan. It's kind of our side gig, or as Nick likes to refer to it, as the after party to Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast.
That's right. It's the Gold Standard after party, definitely.
Yeah, Gold Standard after party, where we have adult beverages, adult conversation. We watch our favorite movies. And last night we recorded one of my favorite movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's one of my top 10 all-time favorite movies. So I had a ball with this. Zan, had a lot of fun, and, it's one of hers as well. So it was great to finally be able to share this movie with her, even, just over the internet where we recorded it. But I hope everybody checks that out. And then coming up in 2 weeks, Christine Peruski is going to be joining us as our very first special guest host as we watch the 1985 murder mystery movie based on the board game Clue.
Oh, yes. And I know I definitely will have to let Rachel know about that one, because that's one of her all-time favorite films. So I definitely have to let Rachel know that you guys were doing that one.
Well, encourage her to write in to Drunk Cinema.
I will let her know, because as I said, I do know her love for that film. It's a great movie for sure.
It is. Hope she sends in some feedback for that, because I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear her thoughts on this. All right. So that's all I have, but Nick, thank you again. Had a lot of fun talking Jupiter's Legacy with you, sir.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Love doing this, as I said, Charles.
And I think it's been some really interesting discussions we've been having.
Yeah, as you had actually mentioned previously, folks thought we might not have anything to say about this, but
oh my God, we can't stop talking about this show. Probably everybody's just like, will you guys wrap it up already? So with that in mind, okay, next time on the Fandom Zone, episode 218, as we're going to talk What's the Use and Cover Her Face, the 5th and 6th episodes of Jupiter's Legacy. So the next 2 episodes we're going to be talking about as we slide into the back half of hopefully just season 1 of Jupiter's Legacy. So hopefully, Nick, you're looking forward to it. I know I am.
I certainly am.
And hopefully everybody else comes back. So Nick will be here. I'll be here. We're going to discuss What's the Use and Cover Her Face, episodes 5 and 6 of Jupiter's Legacy, right here on the Phantom Zone podcast. See you next time, everybody. Bye.
Ciao.